said, oh yeah, Ohio, like it's just there. It's just there. Like there's nothing going on there. Like, and it's like.
So that's our brand called a brown bag lunch they have. And it's like every Tuesday on the first week of the month. But I wanted to get you guys into social work and social justice today. Hopefully get you out so you can do some work on your papers. Anybody else get affected by allergies and get tired from it? Or like, oh, it wears me down. I don't know why. They say your allergies change every 7 years. Like you get either better or worse allergies. So that is part of it. Let's see if I can get the social work and social justice centered. So that is, what week are we in so far? This is it week 5? Gosh, man. See how fast it's flying through? You're probably right. So was it August 15th, August 22nd, August 29th for the first 3 weeks? Then September. Okay, 4th and 11th is today. Okay. Damn. So we're a third of the way through the semester. You believe that? It's like 5 out of 16 weeks. At least 30% done with the semester. Hey Siri, what's 5 divided by 16?
5 divided by 16
31% done. So this one gets into social justice, which may be why you got into social work in the first place. That's kind of why I got into social work, living in El Salvador, living in Nicaragua. There is a few videos on social work and social justice. This one's just a minute. The other one is longer, but I wanted to start it with this. If it won't copyright hit
This is
me.
Lumen, the first device for hacking your metabolism.
Anybody ever buy this stuff? I want to try it, but I don't know what it is. It tells you how much you burn calories and how fast.
Social work is the only helping discipline that holds social justice as an underlying core principle. What is social justice? To put it simply, it's how human rights are manifested in everyday lives of people at every level of society. Unfortunately, the extent to which you can enjoy these rights depends heavily on your income, wealth, and identity. In a country with a lot of opportunity, many people contend with poverty, economic inequality, identity-based bigotry, and other injustices. Social workers see the effects of this profound level of inequality every day.
On the other side of all these policies are people. On the other side of these research studies are people. And we owe it to those people. We owe it to the individuals that we serve to do the best that we can. And if we're not good, we need.
This guy's the dean of the College of Social Work, where I went to at the University of Kentucky. They have a really good Master of Social Work program. They also have a doctorate of social work. So, and it's all online if people like online stuff. But this is all where I went to graduate school.
Need to get better at it in terms of engaging with policy, engaging with systems in a way that will mean meaningful change for them.
For true social justice to be achieved, we need people who understand how and why others experience injustice and who are willing and able to disrupt the status quo. We need social workers. Our goal is to help you become the difference in the lives of others. Earn your CSWE accredited online Master of Social Work degree from the University of Kentucky and make meaningful change possible.
So there's also, I believe it's all in person, but a few miles down the road, there's this place called Cedarville University. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. It's like another small Christian university, but they're doing a graduate school forum, which I know it may feel early in freshman or sophomore year to consider graduate school, but if you have your sights set on it, it's good to think about it now, because if you don't think about it, like myself, it took me an extra year to get into graduate school and a few extra years to graduate, because I never thought of it. I'm like, graduate school. Like, nobody in my family had done grad school. I was a first generation graduate student and first generation doctoral student. So nobody really told me to do that. They're just like, go to school, get a degree, or go work full time somewhere landscaping. So those were my two options. I didn't really like the manual labor, but I did it all through college. And that's kind of where I started off in doing psychology and theology in undergrad. And after living in El Salvador, people said, maybe you want to consider social work, because it does include social justice. So they start off chapter 6 about a just society accords every societal member the same basic rights, same opportunities, and same benefits. Social work's role, we as social workers and the people that work with social workers work for a just society. So it started in human rights, and you'll find this in the Code of Ethics on your second big assignment and paper. Human rights are the rights inherent by virtue of being human. A few they list here are to protect life, to ensure freedom, and to secure personal liberty, like to be able to, kind of what we hear in the Constitution, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's ideal. Other human rights categories, there's civil and political rights, social and economic rights, and then collective rights. Some of them you'll see on this video of why social work started. So does anybody know how old the profession of social work is, if you were to take a guess at it? 15 years? So you're probably right that we could get a license in social work. Same with counseling. Like, they used to not have licensure. I always say, like, some social work started way back with like hospitals and churches. That's why a lot of the hospitals are called like St. Jude and St. Thomas. But there's a movement. I'll show you the video. I guess I'm still signed into the teams there. But there is a history of social work and why it started. And I'll put it on for you guys here, because we are one of the oldest human services professions. Counseling's only about 50 years old. Marriage and family therapy might be like 40 years old. So here's your history of social work, if it starts at the right spot.
Hey, do you ever walk into a room and completely forget why you're there?
Yeah,
Yes.
because it has been woven from people's stories into a compelling narrative of struggle, renewal, and success. The social work profession has a distinguished history of not only providing social safety nets to the most vulnerable, but also challenging systems that impede social mobility.
I think there's one narrated by somebody that has.
I have theme song. Come on. I love this song. And I love this song because everybody needs a hero.
This is it. Okay.
The theme of social work in 2013 is Weaving Threads of Resiliency and Advocacy, the Power of Social Work. As a weaver myself, this is an imagery I love because it confirms that our lives are indeed interwoven.
All right, here it is. This is the founder of social work. And she founded
The
it.
18th century served as the peak time for development of cities. Chicago, being one of these cities, decided to transform industrial.
In Chicago. Social work was founded in the city of Chicago. So this is about the founder of social work and how it became kind of, instead of just like hospitals and churches like St. Jude, St. Thomas, providing basic needs to everyone, where social work then kind of took off all throughout the country after this movement.
Industrialization, assemble large buildings, and do much more. Population had gone up tremendously, the consumer economy thrived, and the meatpacking industry had become a success.
It's a weird picture.
However, as soon as immigration hit, The perfect city became overpopulated and was put into a state of poverty. With slums lining up the streets, children wearing rags, a lack of clean water, rudimentary plumbing systems, and other prominent issues, Chicago realized that they needed to turn to social welfare.
So there was a huge movement at first because in the early 1900s, there was no child labor law. Like they usually would get children to do the jobs that had like the need for small hands to put stuff together, kind of like sweatshops are nowadays. And there was no child labor law. So a kid could go out and work in 1901, go work 40 hours a week and then never get an education. So they were kind of stuck doing that type of work forever. And that's when these social workers stepped in. It was called the Hull House in Chicago. And you can visit.
In the year of 1889, Ellen Gay Starr, an American social reformer, paired with Jane Addams, a friend from college. Together, they co-founded the Hull House, one of the first social settlements in North America. This was an abandoned mansion built by Charles Hull in 1856. It all started when Jane was born on September 6, 1860, in Cedarville, Illinois. She lived a privileged life, with her father being Illinois State Senator and important businessman. He was looked upon as high in society, with widely recognized friends such as President Abraham Lincoln. In the 1880s, Addams always had a negative self-image because she was diagnosed with tuberculosis only as a child. An adept reader, she was one of the only women at that time to graduate from a college. She was valedictorian at Rockford's College for Girls, where she studied medicine and met Ellen Starr. She and Ellen took a trip to Europe and found a pioneer settlement called Toynbee Hall. Their view of the structure and slums dotting areas in Europe motivated them to co-found the Hull House. To begin making changes, they received deeds and land rights from the owner of the building, Helen Culver. According to a book written by Addams called 20 Years at Hull House, the house had passed through many changes since it had been built in 1856 for the homestead of one of Chicago's pioneer citizens.
So it was essentially a intentional community. So like places where people could meet their basic needs. She wrote that book, 20 Years at Hull House, because that was kind of her autobiography, what they would call it.
Mr. Charles J. Hull. Before it had been occupied by the factory, it sheltered a second-hand furniture store, and at one time the Little Sisters of the Poor had used it for a home for the aged. It had a bad reputation for a haunted attic, so the tenants living on the second floor always kept a large pitcher full of water on the attic stairs.
Jane Addams' political awakening had to do with this really important topic in the early 20th century, which was child labor. In this idea of kind of civic housekeeping and outreach to the poor immigrant workers of Chicago, this very upper class, well-educated woman, I think started sometimes without a full realization of what was the grinding daily reality of the very poor people who she was trying to pull up and bring into the modern North American vision of progress that she and people like her had. So one thing that was really interesting, one time she had young factory workers and she was talking to them perhaps about issues of learning English or keeping clean houses or whatever other kinds of things she was trying to do in this mission of social betterment. And she passed around little bowls of candy for people to eat. And she was at first surprised when she saw little children recoiling with horror and disgust at the sight of candy, very much the opposite of what anyone would expect. And that's what led her to realize that those very children were sort of toiling away probably for like 16 hours a day in horrible conditions in the very factories where those candies were made. And so whatever it was she might have been originally trying to teach people about, she started to understand that the dire exploitation of factory workers and the horrendous employment of children, as young as 9, 10, or 11 was a really important issue that she would have to sort of tackle.
By 1907, the Hull House had developed into a monumental 13-building structure offering classes on Shakespeare, music concerts, and the fine arts. The new buildings offered numerous classes and clubs for children and adults. They also included several areas of interest, including a gymnasium, theater, music school, art gallery, pool, nursery, library, kitchen, and a post office. In the first 20 years of development of the Hull House, a countless amount of people were drawn into reforming the social, educational, and artistic programs. With the help of a few other women, Adams and Starr established Chicago's first public playground, explored any working problems, and much more. They also
So as the Hull House kind of like moved throughout history, they got some of these things overturned. They had the child labor laws passed. Like, you guys ever get overtime at any job you've done in the summer? Or if you work more than 8 hours in a day or 40 hours in a week, they pay you time and a half? Okay. So that was one of the examples of the laws. Like, it used to be you could work as many hours in the week as get paid the same, but they wanted fair labor laws for everyone. That was one of them. Child labor law, which now is annoying, but don't you have to get like Kroger's to sign off when you work in you're 14 or 15? Like, are there things in other states where you got to get a signature to work?
I know if you're like in Texas, you can't work past like 10 o'clock.
Okay. So that's another example with like, I think if it's a family business, you're allowed to work, but these are some of the things, and it certainly helped that her dad was a senator. Like, I don't know if Adams is one of the presidents, but she was the daughter of one of the big legislatures.
My anxiety.
I want to go to this one as it's a little shorter, but breaking down Jane Addams, the founder of social
Born
work.
in Cedarville, Illinois, Jane Addams was raised in a family with high social status. Her father was a prosperous miller and a local political leader. He served 16 years as a state senator, fought as an officer in the Civil War, and was a friend to Abraham Lincoln. At an early age, Jane Addams was diagnosed with congenital spinal defect and was very ill throughout her entire life. But her illness didn't stop her from graduating from the Rockford Female Seminary in 1881 with a bachelor's degree. At the age of 27, Addams took a tour of Europe with her friend Ellen Starr, where they visited a settlement house known as Tonby Hall in London's East End. That visit helped finalize the idea of opening a similar house in an underprivileged area of Chicago, where the focus of Jane Addams's work was located. At that time, Chicago was home to many low-income families who had come to Chicago for a better life. Immigrants and African Americans inhabited most of Chicago in slums with barely enough money to feed their families. Some found it hard to find jobs due to racism, while others because of language barriers. Children didn't go to school, so those who could speak English were forced to support their families, working as shoeshine boys or newsboys. Many fathers who could work, immigrant or not, earned low incomes, died early, or simply deserted their families, forcing children to once again pick up the slack. With diseases like smallpox and TB on the rise, doctors' visits became essential to survival, but many families were too poor to afford to see one. Factory workers worked in poor conditions. Dehumanized, impersonal factories led to many uprisings as workers struggled for shorter hours, higher wages, and better safety standards. Cuts in wages resulted in revolts and riots. Amidst this struggling society, Addams and Starr founded the Hull House in 1889. The purpose was to provide a center for higher civic and social life, to institute and maintain educational and philanthropic enterprises, and to investigate and improve the conditions in the industrial districts of Chicago. Social settlements like Hull House and Tonby Hall were created in response to problems created by urbanization, industrialization, and immigration. Settlement houses attracted educated native.
Have you guys ever been to Chicago? Anybody in here? It's big. So This is like that main street downtown where they have all the shopping centers and whatnot nowadays. But back then, you know, it was a big lake, so it had a port and things would come in from overseas and even, you know, areas that were far away, but a lot of immigration. So if you've, you know, just like today, where most of the US population is growing because of immigration, it was big back then, and we didn't have a lot of the modern electrical things or even gas or oil. As you can see, there's not many cars there. It's mostly those rail cars, like the trains that they had to move lumber and to move stuff like that.
Born, middle class and upper class men and women, known as residents, to live or settle in poor urban neighborhoods to help the area's poor and homeless. Hull House set the foundation for social work in America. It was located in a populated urban neighborhood in Chicago. It was host to many programs, including kindergarten classes, daycare, club meetings, and night school. They added an art gallery, a public kitchen, a coffee house, a gym, a pool, a book bindery, a music school, an employment bureau, and a labor museum. It also offered a meeting place for trade unions and cultural events in the surrounding neighborhoods. The residents of Hull House made speeches about the needs of the neighborhood, raised money, took care of children, and nursed the sick. After the second year of operation, Hull House was host to over 2,000 people every week. Adams wrote many articles and books devoted to the ideals she fought for, but also found herself in the eye of the media many times. She was criticized because she fought for equality and was often accused of being a socialist, an anarchist, and a cultural feminism were bashed in the media, but it didn't stop her willingness to fight for what she believed was right and just. She continued to rally for the rights of women as well as for peace. She founded many organizations and peace efforts and held office until her death. After her death in 1935, Hull House continued to serve Chicago residents through the Depression of the 1930s and World War II, and the organization she founded and supported made great strides in equality. While Hull House is one of Jane Addams' most known achievements, it was certainly not the last. Throughout her adult life, Addams founded and supported many social programs, such as supporting the founding of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, founding the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and helping found the Chicago Federation of Settlements. She and other lobbyists worked for legislation to protect immigrants from exploitation, limit working hours for women, mandate schooling for children, recognize labor unions, and provide industrial safety. Addams worked as a mediator in the Chicago Garment Workers' Strike and served as vice president of the National Women's Trade Union League. She became the first American woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in 1931. Jane Addams' contributions to society changed people's views on equality and had great impacts on many lives. She created the foundation for social work in America, giving many opportunities to low-income families and individuals. Through her work and the work of others, society has been changed, offering a better world for future generations.
So that is kind of the start of social work. And, you know, they, as mentioned, they had a lot of things that Jane Addams did that was very, very helpful to overall society, with like the 40-hour work week, getting the right for women to vote. Did you guys know 100 years ago about was 1919 was when women began to vote. So that was even sooner than anything else in terms of social justice issues, the labor laws. And she did it with a lot of advocating by using her pen, so being able to write. So that's partly why a lot of people understand social work has a lot of writing assignments, and that's why. Just learning how to write in general, if it is writing your notes for your clients, or if it's writing legislatures to change laws, or finding different ways to advocate, That's huge. Thank you. And it's something to consider because we still have that same work to be done. You know, as much progress has been made in 100 years, there's still, you know, poverty. I don't know if you guys see it in any of your towns. Do you guys have any impoverished areas in your town? Or is it? Oh, yeah. Is that where the flood hit once? Was there like a big hurricane and flood, or is that more Houston, I guess? Okay. Dallas would have like, sometimes it snows there though, right?
Mhm.
What happened when all the power went out in those years ago? It was like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it's like about a year ago. I would say a lot of people, I know a lot of elderly died.
Holy
because
crap.
They didn't have like power for like weeks and weeks. And I'm pretty sure they didn't do anything about the homeless. They were still outside.
Okay.
The snowstorm.
So yeah, you see, and that may be because Texas isn't used to the cold like we are up here, but we still have similar stuff going up here. Like they've had some power challenges that have gone off that are mostly California right now, but anybody keeping up on Europe and the power grid situation that they have? It's actually pretty bad. And that's mostly because of the Ukraine war and they're not getting electric power in video. I'll try to use like simple search terms, but it's, you know, something that is definitely affecting people right now. And here's kind of what it looks like. Hopefully they can describe it, but there's no.
Like the energy crisis in Europe, it's getting worse by the day. Electricity bills are soaring, gas reserves are depleting, and winter is coming. As the mercury dips, gas and oil consumption is going to pick up. But Europe does not have enough supplies. So what is it doing to avert this crisis from snowballing? Cost cutting. Almost every European nation has set new power-saving targets, new limits on energy consumption.
So one of the things they're doing, like in Spain, you can't put your air conditioning lower than 83 degrees.
Ooh.
So that's kind of crazy, but it's still, believe it or not, is cooler than the outdoors of 90 or 95. But yeah, so they're doing lots of different things to trim back their energy usage. They were kind of warned about this a few years ago, but they didn't listen. They've gotten most of their power from Moscow. And because of the war, it's now shut off. Like the pipeline, they've just cut it off. And I don't know if Texas had the same thing, but it was mostly run off solar panels in Europe. So right now they have to produce enough off a solar panel to heat their house, which doesn't always happen. So that's one of the things coming up. Food inflation. In fact, they had the new number coming out today. I meant to look it up. Inflation numbers. And it was supposed to go down because of gas. Oh, it rose. Never mind. It was supposed to go down today because they've been flooding like the war reserves of gasoline that we have, which is like 83,000 barrels of oil. Sometimes it's hard to make sense of it, but they were putting lots of oil out onto the market. And apparently prices are still going up, which is kind of a bummer. Have you guys seen it on any foods that you buy, or gas, or travel, or airline tickets, or
Airline tickets.
It did get way expensive on that stuff. So the report, that is still from last month. So maybe it didn't totally go up. It was supposed to hit. And some of these are very boring to me, so I'm not going to. Here's the new inflation numbers. So I thought it would go up again, but it's cool that,
Metaphor will go.
with some things that they're doing, it could have gone down. Hopefully it did. As there's a lot of like food pantries are short on food. There's a lot of places that are serving that are short on just about everything.
On inflation as the cost of essentials remains high. Let's go to our chief White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, with that. Good morning, Cecilia.
Hey, Robin, good morning to you. Yeah, just 56 days now until those midterms, and the White House knows that inflation, the economy are top of mind for voters. So these numbers just came in. Let me show you what we're talking about right now. The consumer price index rose to 8.3%. That's up from a year ago, and it's worse than analysts predicted. But it means that Americans are still paying sky-high prices for things like groceries, rent, new cars, and education. There is, though, this silver lining. Gas prices continue to fall. That national average now at about $3.70 a gallon. That's down from those records that we saw over the summer. The White House is really hoping to be able to say that the worst when it comes to inflation is now behind us. And today here at the White House, President Biden is going to be hosting this big celebration celebrating the Inflation Reduction Act. That, of course, is the massive health, climate, and tax law that was signed last month. But guys, you know this, with those midterms so close, the White House officials here really for improvement when it comes to the economy, and soon.
All right, Cecilia, appreciate your report.
So what do you guys think? Like social justice, inflation, cost of food, cost of housing, how do they connect? Like how are they linked in, and are we doing a good job at helping people with it? That is most of the stuff we'll do as a social worker. Like that video from last week, it's like on the poverty line. So if the line's at $24,000 a year for a family of 4, but it goes up by 8.3%, I'm going to try to do some math. So bear with me. That's like $2,000 extra to be able to just make the poverty line. So now instead of $24,000 a year, it's $26,000 a year. And so all of those who made 24, 25, and then just 26,000 a year, now they're under the poverty line. Like it's hard to pay rent. It's hard to pay, for things. So people online too, how is inflation, affecting you all? How is there social justice in it? So in more chapter 6, the right to social welfare, we've got economic and social and cultural rights. You've got the right to work, the right to standard of living that supports adequate health care and well-being, the right to education. So college and education is another number that's like seriously gone up. Have you guys ever seen how much more expensive college is today than it used to be?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I think college is, yeah.
A lot of people say that. And a lot of people agree with that. Like,
because I think the government is trying to like set up or like trying to say you can only be successful in life if you graduate from college, which is not true.
Absolutely.
You need way other things to be successful in life.
Absolutely. And a lot of people prove that too. Like they show you don't need that degree. You don't need different things. So here's what it looks like. Tuition since 1970 has gone up by 2,000%. So it was $1,700 to go to school 40, 50 years ago. And now the average, I mean, you guys maybe pay different in state, out of state, or based off of, if you get a Pell Grant or not, but between 70 and 2020 and 50 years, it's definitely from 1,700 to 17,000 probably when I was in college in 1999 to 37,000. So it's up 100%, then another 100%. So it keeps going up every year. Some people argue it's because of the access to student loans. Like in grad school, they give us $21,000 a year for student loans. I noticed when they gave us that in 2005 or 2006, that's how much most of the tuitions were, like right at $21,000 a year. So it just so happens they give you $21,000 a year in student loans. Now the tuition's $21,000 a year. Like, how does that happen? So there's a lot of good writers on this even. One is Dave Ramsey about college tuition and student loan debt. And you can watch this free with your college email address. The college scam, let's call it. Is he really, if you're not doing, he calls it like cash float in college. If you're taking out as many loans as, say, for example, I did, it could be challenging. So here's a movie he put out. It just came out this year. Might have been December of 21.
It's a luxury diaper that's
And
made with certified.
you can watch it free with your Central State email address.
Take softness into
You just have to sign up with that. I've already used all my free signups. Otherwise, I would show it to you guys.
So do you think college is the only way you can be successful in life?
No matter what you do in life, no matter what dreams you chase, if you have a degree to fall back on, you're always safe.
Financing college is very tough for millions of Americans. Tuition has gone through the roof.
This is one of the most important financial decisions in your life.
That's a lot to put on an 18-year-old, and yet we're saying, do you want $50,000 in student loans?
I did look at it as it was an investment in myself, like it's okay.
I always thought everything's just going to be fine. Everything will sort itself out. I always thought
the student loan problem has reached epidemic proportions, affecting approximately 44 million Americans.
There's something about the word student before the word loan that just makes us think about this differently, and like differently in a very bad way.
I had to do something.
I didn't have any other options.
I had taken out $125,000 after 4.5 years of college.
We've brainwashed kids into thinking this is normal, this is safe, except it's not.
There is no one that's going to stop you from borrowing.
Yeah, like when you want something really bad, you gotta take all of it.
Everyone has debt.
Everyone has it.
There's a whole lot of people who view your ability to take on a ton of debt as their chance to get rich. You know, here I am, 36. I have $1 million in student loans. Student loan borrowers have less rights, less protections, and we use the full weight of the government to make sure you pay that back.
I know people that are planning to die with that debt.
Is that the American dream?
The choices that they made now own them.
We would never get a house. We wouldn't be able to have kids.
I'm paying all these bills and I have nothing.
We've officially hit rock bottom.
If I can meet a complete stranger and this is what we
Don't
have in
forget the
common,
purse.
I do not want to live my life paying for things in my past. That's the normal I refuse to be a part of.
People shouldn't leave college in chains.
Stop telling people that this is the path.
Any of you guys seen that one?
I believe it's true because my mom's still paying student loans from this school today.
What years did she go?
She went back in the 90s.
Okay.
Or I think she graduated in like 2001 or 2002.
Okay.
And she's still paying student loans to this day.
Yeah. I've never seen this one. It only came out 6 months ago. So the gist of it is actually a good thesis statement. So not to borrow the maximum amount that they will loan you and party it up the whole time in college. Obviously, you can have fun, but like they say, a balance of a 20-hour work week job is good. You actually do better with 20 hours. More than 20 hours, your grades can suffer a little bit. I noticed when I worked 20 hours a week, I had better grades. When I did 30 hours a week working in college, I had a little bit worse. and I can still see it on my transcripts. I know where I worked, what I did, some of the challenges that came up during those times. So they're saying don't take out the full amount, just take out what you need, and if you can, cash flow it and write to the 100 different scholarship funds available. You might only get one or two, but if you hit lick on a $5,000 scholarship, that's worth the potential 35 or 55 hours it takes to apply this. You know, it may take you like a whole weekend to get all that work done, but it'll pay dividends to cash flow and find all the options available. I want to bookmark this
The
one.
more I dived into this topic, the worse I feel.
I guess it's another guy that's from a different country, but it looks like it's gotten to, they said $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion now has total been lent out to students all throughout the lending. And that's more than credit cards. It's almost as much as housing. So it becomes a justice issue because of that. Chapter 6 covers all the social injustices. So we've got the isms: racism, elitism, sexism, heterosexism.
What is that?
Which one?
Heterosexism.
So I'm going to go ahead and ideally like seeing and thinking that everybody is heterosexual and like, and statistically everywhere we have at least 10% that are not heterosexual. So it's something, I'll put it into Google search bar for you too, to get you the Webster Dictionary. So discrimination or prejudice against gay people on the assumption that heterosexuality is the normal sexual orientation. Whereas I say normal is only a setting on a washing machine. So it's something to be careful of when somebody says normal. These are a few others that not everybody has heard of, like both handicapism and ableism, and then also ageism. You guys heard of that one before? So there's quite a few, but a lot of times, like if I put out my resume now and they see I went to college in the 90s, they kind of be like, you're an old dude. I mean, I'm not that old yet, but a lot of times they don't want to hire somebody when they get close to their 50s, but they can't say that out loud. Just the same way they don't want to hire somebody who identifies a certain way or hire somebody because they're male or female or otherwise. So there's a lot of discrimination things that come out with that. Here's a few.
Ever been told to act your age?
Yes.
From the minute we're born, we're judged according to how old we are. And this can lead us to being treated unfairly because of our age. This is ageism. It's the most widespread form of discrimination in the UK, and it will impact us all at some point, particularly as we get older. Ageism affects how society sees older people. They're often reduced to offensive stereotypes, patronized, or treated as a burden. And it even affects how we see ourselves. As the years progress, we start to believe what we read, see, and hear, and come to think that we're past it. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it's more hidden. But ageism is everywhere. The media focuses on frailty and decline, and fixates on older people falling prey to things like scams. Journalists can also wrongly portray people in later life as rich baby boomers, despite millions of older people living in poverty. And this false generalization can give the impression that older people are less worthy of support. Advertising sells us promises of how to defy the aging process rather than embrace it.
Oh yeah, they get rid of my
When
wrinkles.
you do see older people in adverts, it's usually to sell products linked to death and decline, like funeral plans. Across every sector and in every corner of society, we're met with negative attitudes towards getting older. Age discrimination isn't just unfair, it's illegal. Yet ageism is part of everyday life.
In the workplace, older employees are often treated as less able, routinely held back from training opportunities, or feel shut out of the jobs market entirely. And it can also affect access to healthcare. Studies show that older people are often not consulted about their care preferences and can be discouraged or even restricted in accessing the treatment they need. But the bleak stories we're told and sold about getting older do not reflect reality. In fact, life satisfaction is at its highest in later life, and most of us don't actually think older people benefit at the expense of younger people. The majority of us recognize that older adults have plenty to contribute to society. 4 in 5 of us believe that we could all benefit from the wealth of experience that older adults have. It's clear that age is not the problem. Ageism is. To find out more and help end ageism, visit
Did we say what the average age people live to is in this class yet? Any guesses? What do you think most people grow up to? Like when will most people die? The average age of death? You're probably right. It's going down, so it could hit that because of COVID and the opioid crisis. Like it's for women, it's more like 79 to 80. For men this year, it went down from 75 to 73. So average together, it's like 75. And a lot of the discriminations. Here's one, not to take too much of your time, but stuff that comes up on heterosexism. Oh, they're not going to have words for us. It's going to be.
Gus, our next question is, what is heterosexism?
Heterosexism is a system of attitudes, bias, and discrimination in favor of opposite sex sexuality in relationships. It can include the presumption that other people are heterosexual or that opposite sex attractions in relationships are the only form and therefore superior. Although heterosexism is defined in the online editions of the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language and the Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary as anti-gay discrimination or prejudice by heterosexual people and by heterosexuals, respectively, people of any sexual orientation can hold such attitudes and bias and can form a part of internalized hatred of one's sexual orientation. Heterosexism as discrimination ranks gay men, lesbians, bisexuals, and other sexual minorities as second-class citizens with regard to various legal and civil rights, economic opportunities, and social equality in many of the world's jurisdictions and societies. It is often related to homophobia.
I know we are getting towards, there actually was a huge push on all of the isms throughout the 60s and the 70s. And as you can see, some of these, like with heterosexism, ageism, and whatnot, it can be put into your next paper. So some of the things that we value in the NASW Code of Ethics, some of the reasons for having the code, the social justice, human rights, and things of that nature. And we'll get into ableism on the next one on Thursday. But there's something specific to how I ended it in the 70s. Next slide. We've got the definition. So racism is ideology that perpetuates the social domination of one racial group by another. Elitism is prejudice against those in lower economic classes. Sexism is the belief that one sex is superior to the other. Heterosexism is prejudice against people whose sexual orientation differs from that of heterosexuals. Ageism is the belief that one group is inferior to another. And handicapism is prejudice against people who have mental or physical disabilities. There's actually a good documentary on Geraldo Rivera and how he kind of broke into the handicapism at the time, and him revisiting some of that in the 1990s. So, any questions about? We're halfway through the chapter at this point on chapter 6. You guys got any questions about the assignment or? Yeah.
What is it?
I believe I gave you 2 weeks on Thursday. Yes.
This is another question.
Okay. It was, you guys are intro. So 2 weeks from Thursday would have been probably September 14th, right? It looks like September 21st. So September 21st. Yeah. Oh, for the next one, yeah. We can get into it. I was going to save it for next time. Right. Or at least finish you with the definition that we get here. So believe in survival of fittest, the idea that certain people become powerful in society because they are innately better. Yeah. People still believe this. Social Darwinism has been used to justify imperialism, racism, eugenics, and social inequality at various times over the past century and a half. You guys know what eugenics is? You heard of that? So, this is another FA21. Nikita kind of shows these in her class about like Black genocide in the 21st century in America. This is a documentary it is anti-abortion, but produced by an activist. The film argues that modern day prevalence of abortion among African Americans is rooted in the attempted genocide or the MAFA of Black people. The film is part of anti-abortion, anti-birth control campaign aimed at African Americans. Some of the conspiracy theories that the founder of abortion clinics placed them only in Black neighborhoods at first. So obviously it's debatable, but I don't know. Do you guys see or agree or disagree?
I think it's weird that people put in Black neighborhoods because, and it's kind of like the thing that people don't want to see, whether you're pro or against. It's not something that people want to see. So, that's why they would put this in. But I'm not for I don't agree with that at all. Especially birth control. If you don't want to have abortion, then we should do preventative measures.
Right. Well, you could take the pill, have a condom, or have something where.
They said anti-birth control.
Right.
Or anti-abortion. I don't agree with that either, but.
Right. Yeah, and there's been a few documentaries on both sides, so you can see the pro-abortion side and the anti-abortion side. Let's see here. We get more into this during human behavior in the social environment, but there's a few documentaries that you can see that come up about abortion on both sides, and the most recent being, interesting that it doesn't come up. I saw the picture when I did this first one, but I don't know if you guys have ever seen this one or heard of it. We can watch it next time if you want, but it's just the idea that for some reason Black neighborhoods more than others do have more of the clinics in their inner city or whatever. You know what I mean?
I didn't know that.
When I think about it.
It is definitely, and it is probably using some type of red line. But
like eugenics and whatnot. Well, they say Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood, that was her intention and goals at first. Yes, that's the conspiracy theory.
I actually heard of that.
And so that's what this documentary. Right, you would think we'd be done with that, but she probably lived, let's see here, Margaret Sanger, M-A-R-G-A.
You know, like, how did she become successful in doing that? Like, was it more targeted, like, hey, you don't need this kid, or like, you know, how did she go about
That's a good question. I have never dug in too far with it, but certainly something to be considered. I'm trying to think. She's a birth control activist, sex educator, writer, and nurse, popularized birth control, opened the first clinic in the United States, established organizations involved in Planned Parenthood, used her writings and speeches primarily to promote her way of thinking, was prosecuted for her book on family limitation under the Comstock Act, feared consequences of her writing, led. Yeah, I don't know the exact. I know these guys kind of dig into it on the MAFA 21. And it's important to watch as much as you can on both sides of issues, just so you can be fully informed. You know what I mean? But here's the critics of this film. So critics of the film countered many of the film's points. They say that Sanger was not racist, and she was instead much more sympathetic than many of her peers to the plight of the Black race. They say that there were racist people on both sides of the eugenics debate in the early 20th century. They assert that eugenics movement in the U.S. was little concerned with African Americans having much greater interest in limiting Hispanics and Asians. They note that Sanger wanted birth control and sterilizations to be made available to anybody who wished to have it without regard to race. Critics say that African Americans, especially women, were in favor of birth control being made more available to them, and that Black women had been inducing their own abortions from the earliest days of American slavery. Political columnist and abortion rights advocate Michelle Goldberg notes that MLK Jr. praised Margaret Sanger and accepted an award from Planned Parenthood. So, I mean, you can dig in deep. I'm not going to say there's any right answer on it, but this is a film that's clearly saying that there was something about eugenics or Black genocide specifically. We can get into it more on Thursday. We could even watch this trailer. Have you guys heard of this one? It's called Unplanned. So this is arguing on the other side. Do you want to see the trailer, or is it like, all right, here's.
Abby Johnson is in the other room.
Here.
Our first order of business is to present Planned Parenthood's Employee of the Year Award. Abby Johnson.
This is Abby. She's our newest volunteer escort. Abby, this is Cheryl Alessandro.
I'd be the youngest director in Planned Parenthood history.
You'll actually be in charge of the abortions at your clinic.
I have a chance to make a real difference.
No matter what you do for the rest of your life, you're still gonna be a baby killer.
The only thing that's changed is you, Abby. Can you even hear yourself talk right now about these procedures? These are little babies.
I'm not going to apologize for doing a job that helps women in crisis.
There's still part of me that isn't sure.
I know. But the one thing that all experts agree on is that at this stage, the fetus can't feel anything.
Sorry to bother you, but they need an extra person in the back room. Are you free?
I saw it. It was like it was twisting and fighting for its life.
commend the souls of these hundreds of children. And Lord, we pray to end abortion.
I really appreciate what you've done for us. I'll not forget it.
22,000 abortions. How do I even comprehend that?
Rough day at the office.
You didn't say that.
It's your dad and me. You are our baby from the moment of conception.
We are paying you to be a perfect instrument of corporate policy. We are an abortion provider.
I can't be part of this anymore. Everything that they had told us is a lie.
Don't underestimate the repercussions of this. You gotta be careful.
Rhonda, please don't do it! Rhonda!
Let me tell you what's gonna happen if you walk through that door.
Congratulations. You've made an enemy of one of the most powerful organizations on the planet.
So essentially, she worked her way up in an abortion clinic. She was a provider for many, many years. They show, it's a true story. So they show the turning point for her. She was asked to help out in the back, and they showed the sonar. I forget what they call it, like what do they call those things? Ultrasound of the baby, and I guess you have to see it. It's, you know, it's worth. I actually did. So what do you think?
I think like different people have different views, and like if that was a turning point for her, like seeing it, cool. But it was like trying to be like portrayed that like she was lied to and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think like, because she had the job and she was very successful. She worked herself up, and she got other women to have abortions. It was that turning point for other women. And I don't know, she just wasn't lied to, and she was like nobody, like she knew what was going on. She had an abortion herself. She remembers how painful it was, and she told other women to do it. So I don't know, like it just wasn't like I didn't really understand like her. Like I understand like okay, a turning point, something happened to make you change your mind. I understand that part, but like throughout the whole movie. It was like, I don't know, because she was a whole avid worker up until that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she worked for Planned Parenthood. She was like,
She was a part of the problem, quote unquote problem.
and then she flipped on it.
It seemed like people who are like anti-abortion made this and trying to be like, oh, hopefully it will stop other people from supporting. That's what the movie seems like.
Right, right.
But can I?
If you want, I mean, if everybody else is okay with you spoiling it.
So she had an abortion, and like, or she had an abortion or something, and it was like very painful, very bloody, etc., etc. And she was that turning point for other women, and it was painful and bloody, and etc. for other women as well. That's why I'm like, you was like I don't understand like the tea, you know.
Mm-hmm.
She's very educated on abortion. She was the group in the front of all of this. So I don't know how she like I know how she changed, but for her to be like, oh, because she thought she was making a change, a different.
I mean, she still was.
She was like, my goal is not for, but she was persuading people to get abortion.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's why I'm like, why are you crying?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. And like I said, anybody else on that one, I can show you this quick. There's documentaries on both sides, so I always present everybody with all the possibilities that we can see in here. If you want to see this, what's that?
I feel like you gotta watch the movie to see what I'm talking about. I don't think it was a good movie. Like, I didn't really understand her style.
Like it's messed up that she went from pro-abortion to anti-abortion, you're saying, or like it doesn't make sense how she flipped.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Because she knew what she was doing the whole time. Like,
Right.
She may have not seen it, but it was, you had, like, it was so painful for her, and she continued to do it to other women.
Right.
That's why, and she knew what abortion was inside and out. She was very educated on the topic. You knew what it was.
She knew what she was getting herself into.
Yeah, you knew what you was getting yourself into.
Mhm.
So why are you crying?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
for years, you was in this job for years.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden she switches to the complete opposite side. Yeah. So this is one about how Roe v. Wade became, well, there's several, but this is when Roe v. Wade became federal law in 1971. So the only difference from the June ruling is that now Roe v. Wade is no longer the federal law, it's state law. So state by state is changed. This is one last 2-minute trailer. for you guys.
Ordinary women trying to save women's lives, but we were criminals. We were felons. For most of the nation in 72, abortion was illegal. We had to go underground. The woman would be given the to the it was probably obvious to neighbors what was going on. We came to the surface from other things, the anti-war movement, the civil rights movement. You couldn't not pay attention to what was going on. Fetal death is murder. You could not work as a pregnant woman. If you weren't married, you were out of luck. They were terrible situations.
The septic abortion word was full every day.
Women did awful things. They were literally dying because they were women. So we thought we can be of use. I said, we could use my phone, but change it so that they don't ask for Eleanor. How about Jane? Nobody's called Jane anymore. We had the phone numbers on bulletin boards around Chicago. Pregnant, call Jane.
The clientele included daughters, wives, mistresses of police, state's attorney, judges.
It dawned on me how big an issue this was. Jane was an outrageous undertaking by a lot of smart women.
I was not there to pass judgment. I knew there were women like me.
Under the radar of the Chicago Mafia and police department.
We were all being watched. The phone rings. A man says, we know where you are. There were 11 counts of conspiracy to commit abortion. 110 years for each of us. So that's a long time. That might have ended Jane right then and there. I couldn't see myself sitting on the sidelines. We were building a new world, one woman at a time.
Sometimes you have to stand up to illegitimate authority. And sometimes there are unjust laws that need to be challenged.
No, what's that?
They did all that work just for it to get undone.
Which it became federal, what was it, like January of either 71 or 72, and now it's gone. The power has gone back to the states. So I hear what you're saying, and it's also important to recognize that there still are places available if need be for the different I don't know if there's a trailer for this one. So this is another one that could be deemed here it is. This is the one that says that it was started in Black communities only. So again, you know, there's lots of stuff you can see. All of it's on the internet, and
society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. I do not join in the belief that the African is our equal in brain or in heart.
We are paying for and even submitting to the dictates of an ever-increasing, unceasingly spawning class of human beings who never should have been born at all.
I think they're quoting Margaret Sanger here. So that's some of her writings and why they said she may be for genocide and why. Okay. All right.
Society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. I do not join in the belief that the African is our equal in brain or in heart.
We are paying for and even submitting to the dictates of an ever-increasing, unceasingly spawning class of human beings who never should have been born at all.
The laws of
She's the
nature
founder of
require
Planned
the
Parenthood.
obliteration of
The best way to hate a nigger is to hate him before he is born.
American eugenicists were routinely praising Hitler and holding up the Nazi eugenics program as a model for the United States to copy.
Non-white races must be excluded from America. The red and black races, if left to themselves, revert to a savage or semi-savage state
Indians,
in a short time.
Native Americans.
The only way possible of decreasing Negro population is by means of controlling fertility. Birth control facilities could be extended relatively more to Negroes than to whites, since Negroes are more concentrated in the lower income and education classes.
We hope that the restraint of population growth can come about through voluntary means. But if it does not, involuntary.
Yeah, they were thinking of all kinds of different things they could do. Like, as you see in her writings, I guess you would have to look up her historical writings, but they're trying to quote it here. And this is another documentary called Mafa 21.
Methods will be used.
There should be national sterilization for certain dysgenic types of our population who are being encouraged to breed and would die out for the government not feeding them.
If this movement continues, we soon may be accused of fighting poverty by eliminating the poor and overcoming hunger by removing the hungry.
For all their failures, what the eugenics movement had accomplished was to lay the foundation for the next phase of their plan. And this is where they would find the success that they had been chasing for over 100 years.
So I don't know where to find access to that. You may have to look it up on like Netflix, but you know, knowing some of the history of some things, getting into social justice, and I guess that's why we started. Were you the one who asked, what is social Darwinism? So that's kind of where it's rooted in. That's one of the sociological theory that people have social Darwinism, and only the greatest survive. And it is kind of a selfish way of looking at things. Margaret Sanger may have died decades ago. I don't even know when she passed, but I think she started with condoms and different birth control things. But then the birth control movement of Planned Parenthood kind of took off inner city all over the United States. So that's the basis of that documentary. So obviously they all have different intentions that they're going for. You guys can watch them and make the judgment for yourself, but it's definitely worth knowing. You know what I mean? Like, what's that history? I know sometimes we want to eliminate history and not talk about it and not have any of that written about, but I think it's important to know about it so we don't repeat history. You know what I mean? Like, so we know what happened, how can we build a more just society, and what social justice looks like. So we could have hundreds of conversations about injustice. We'll do the theories on Thursday and some of those things. I guess I should stop this one. Any questions?